Hey, hey, Ben Wheeler here with Anthony Marchetta. I'm hoping you guys have a wonderful day today. I'm fresh from the gym. How are you doing today, Anthony?
I'm doing good. I've been home for a few hours, eating dinner, so I'm ready to go.
Ready to go. Take it to ride. So today our subject is Christianizing myths. And no, we're not just slapping a cross on Thor or something, as amusing as that would be, because we are not pagan aboos. Um, pagan gang. Um, pagan larpers? I don't know. What do
I
you have
guess
some?
LARPers.
Do you have a clever wordplay though for me, Anthony?
I have to admit, I've never thought this over very hard.
So what? So we're going to talk about Christianizing myths. Now, John C. Wright is the absolute pope of this. I was going to say king, but he's Catholic. He's the absolute pope of Christianizing myths. His big example is The Cry of the Night Hound, which is a retelling of the myth of Antigone within the Nightland setting. I must admit, full disclosure, it's my least favorite of the Nightland stories that he wrote.
I
That
think it's better. It's not my least favorite. It's not my favorite either. I think it's better than Silence of the Night.
you see, I like that better, but like back when I was doing reading Rainbow Emperor, I actually like kind of rewrote that one, where it's instead of a Telemachus to Odysseus, it's Odysseus to Telemachus. And I just like maybe that's just my relationship with my father coming out or something
Wait.
like that.
Hold on.
Mhm.
Silence of the Night. That was the one with his father, correct?
Yeah,
I'm thinking of the right ones. I just want to make sure before
yeah,
because let me pull it up. I have the book on Kindle.
yep. I'm waiting for my library Castalia library copy to come in. I'm so
Uh,
excited for it.
Cry of the Night Hound is a story that I appreciate more the more I think about it. It's still not. It's never going to be, I think, as good as Awake in the Night, which is and The Last of All Suns, which are both uh,
Yes, those
masterpiece stories. And
absolutely.
all of these. And by the way, everything that we're saying here, I think we could both agree is all relative. I highly recommend Silence of the Night unreservedly. No hesitation. If you
Hmm.
like horror, if you like that sort of style, you will enjoy even the worst of his Nightland stories
Right.
because it's
It's
great.
it's only a 9.5. Okay.
Yeah,
Like
Awake in the Night blew when I first read it blew me away. Like jaw dropped, couldn't believe what I just read type of experience. Last of All Suns took me a little bit longer to appreciate because it's such a big
hmm,
story to wrap your head around, but
yes.
like now looking back on it and rereading it, I have the same type of experience. It also has one of the great final lines in all of fiction.
Read it out for
Uh,
us.
it was so bright.
Ah, yes. That is a fantastic final line whenever you see it. And it was hit pretty well with all the darkness that you've come across so far. Um,
Apparently, he rewrote it. I remember reading this a long time ago. Like, he rewrote that final section 12 times or something.
wow. I didn't know that.
And it shows because it's so. It shows because of how polished it is, I think.
Right. He certainly has a way with words, and it helps that he's a very intelligent man who understands the myth and context that a lot of these things come from. So, in other words, he's not just rewriting a myth where a boy goes out to save his father. He's rewriting a myth where a man has filial piety to his father and goes out into the night to save him and his soul in a manner that any ancient Greek would have immediately recognized, even if they didn't recognize the setting.
Yes.
And that's
Uh.
mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And that's
Finish what
I
you were
was just
saying.
gonna say that's much more powerful than a lot of these things like Percy Jackson and so on, which I understand people like it. but compared, it's not even in the same league.
Yeah, I like Percy Jackson. I think especially, weirdly, I think his Heroes of Olympus series, which was the sequel series to the original Percy Jackson series,
Mm-hmm.
one of the books, which is called Tithes to Tartarus,
Great name.
actually like, which is a good name. Actually, is like a borderline masterful fantasy. The only thing is he slips degeneracy in there. Try and normalize degeneracy,
Oh yeah.
which I do not appreciate. However, judged as an adult without, it's actually like borderline masterful. It's really close to a great book. It's unfortunately one I would not actually recommend to parents of children. I
Mm-hmm.
would say he's trying to normalize degeneracy, keep this away.
Mm-hmm.
But as a book in its own right, like it is very near greatness. Uh, Awake in the Nightland, however, is great. It reaches greatness. It's definitely better. Of course, it's also for adults. At least I would say it's for adults. And the
Mm-hmm.
Percy Jackson series is very much not. So make of that what you will.
It's it's like the whole YA kid fiction, adult fiction has always been murky for me because I read Arabian Nights when I was in the 5th grade, uncensored. Um, and I've been a close fan of Sinbad for all my life. I've got a little pocket addiction that is addiction addition that is absolutely wonderful. Um, I used to take it with me everywhere. So it's like, to me, it's like, what's a kid edition? I don't know. I was reading about men being cuckolded by their wives with their hideous black servants because Arabians are hilariously
Still,
racist.
I think there is something to the audience for the books was intentionally different.
Yeah.
Uh, so make of that what you will. What Rick Riordan was not attempting to Christianize his stories.
Oh,
John
absolutely
C.
not.
Wright would tell you he was not trying to Christianize the Nightland stories, most of which were written before he became a Christian.
Hmm.
Uh, but whether he was trying to or not, he certainly did.
The thing is that the Nightlands is inherently Christian. It was written by William
Yes.
Hope Hodgson, who was he was a very romantic man, we'll say, and he was, I would say that he understood the concept of being in love with, Christ in the Christian sense of the phrase. He understood agape. He understood, sacrifice and whatnot. He loved his wife, and I'm pretty sure that like all the hideous parts of the Nightland are just how him and his wife actually interacted with each other. I've said this numerous times, and I'm gonna die on that hill.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I see. You're probably right. The thing about in the Nightland is a kind of a strange anthology too, because it's so hard to remember. Like, I remember being kind of surprised when I learned later that the four stories were written at different times, published
yep,
originally in separate anthologies, because they work so well as one work where one follows upon the other
yep,
that I would highly recommend anybody who wants to read his Nightland stories reads them as a single work,
yep.
because thematically they build on each other.
They're also,
Especially like the Last of All Sons has to follow Silence of the Night.
yep,
The way that they build off of each other, and the fact that each one explores a different aspect of love between siblings, love between friends, love between men and women and God, and love between father and son. And the fact, like, they really should be read together.
yes. They are incomplete separate. So you take probably the greatest living Christian author of our time. You take, while he wasn't like the greatest author of his time or anything like that, he was certainly formidable, creative, and utterly devoted to God. And then you take them building on each other's shoulders. Like, I consider it a great tragedy that William Hope Hodgson died in World War I, because then we would have had somebody who understood the fire that Christianity has to sort of like live at all times, just
Hmm.
gone. But John C. Wright has done him justice. No other Nightland fan fiction author has done it justice. They
Yeah, I've tried reading others, and not all of them are terrible, but none of them are even in the ballpark.
Yep. There's one or two that are decent. I actually, in the Soul anthology, I actually edited one, and I'm like, so this is a Nightland fan fiction. He's like, no. That's how I imagined his email in my head. Just so you know, it's a great story. But I'm like, but like, I took the story and I said, okay, so here's what I want you to focus on. I want you to focus on uh, sort of like past self influencing the current selves. I want romance and I want stories to be amplified. So instead of something where a girl tries to figure out her lover's secret and whether or not he actually loves her, it's more it's got this romance to it that pushes it to a much higher level. Is it the best story in the anthology? No, but it's pretty darn good. In my opinion, excluding my own story. Uh, I think David Halquist definitely knocks it out of the park and I think fans of comic strips will love Caroline. Uh, oh no, I just forgot her name. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. So the let's bring it back. We've actually got off topic, and I
Yeah,
don't really have a good way to segue back into it for once, which is a horror. Um,
I'm disappointed.
right? So one of the things that was recently discussed in the Superversive group was the myth of Orpheus being Christianized, and I think
Yes, that was
mhm,
good.
I we had different opinions about it, um, and I'll let you go first on it, I guess. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I brought it up, and the reason is this. First off, I've always found the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice pretty fascinating because I think that just as a dramatic story in its own right, it holds up very well throughout the generations. The Orpheus and Eurydice is one of those Greek myths that's not really a myth so much as a story.
Yeah.
It was like probably created by the poets, but there are various versions of it and it's lasted through the centuries. For those who don't know it off the top of their heads, Orpheus and Eurydice is Orpheus is a lyre player with a beautiful voice who's the son of a muse. His voice is incredibly beautiful. He falls in love with a woman named Eurydice who dies young. Heartbroken, he goes down into the underworld and his singing is so beautiful it convinces Hades to let him bring Eurydice up with him, but only on the condition that at no point on the trip to the surface does he look behind him. But of course, at the last second, Orpheus does look behind him, and Eurydice slips into the underworld forever. I had been listening to the musical Hades Town, which is quite good, and I recommend. There are like three different versions of it. My favorite's the Broadway version of the soundtrack, but there's also like a concept album version that apparently was nominated for a Grammy, and an off-Broadway version. I don't know. It's good. It like modernizes the myth kind of to like Great Depression era and turns it into this folk tale. It's very well done, but it did have me wondering. I was thinking of John C. Wright specifically, and most specifically the story "The Cry of the Night Hound," and how he would Christianize the Orpheus myth. So, in The Cry of the Night Hound, we're going to spoil it here, but it's the story of Antigone. It's if anybody knows the Sophocles play, the story of Antigone is that Antigone's brother it dies and she wants to give him proper burial rites, but the king, Creon, who doesn't like her or her family, and I'm going off memory, so which is why some of the details are vague, but doesn't like her or her family and refuses to allow her to go out and give her brother her proper burial rites. Antigone goes out and does it anyway, and when Creon interrogates her, she says that the laws of the gods are more important than the commands of the king. The king doesn't want to hear it and has her entombed alive. When the king changes his mind because his son is, I believe, in love with Antigone, they go in to remove her from the tomb, only to find that she has killed herself, and they are too late. Typical Greek tragedy type stuff. So, the cry of the night hound is John C. Wright's Christianization, which is unusual too because this was before he became a Christian that he wrote this, I believe. But it is his Christianization of the Antigone myth. And in this story, Antigone's brother, and they all have the same name, so I'm calling them Antigone. So, and I'm going to spoil the story, so sorry everybody, but that's how this discussion is going to go. Anyway, Antigone's brother gets stuck in the Nightland and and is killed. But she notices that his body has not been taken by any of the creatures of the night, because the night hounds that her brother had secretly been raising are protecting it. She believes, going off of older stories, specifically the story that was the basis of the original Nightland by William Hope Hodgson, that she brings her brother's body back intact, that perhaps the energy of the earth current in the last redoubt can bring him back to life. But nobody wants to take the risk. And Antigone can't go out herself because women are not allowed to venture into the Nightland alone. But of course, Antigone leaves anyway and ventures into the night against the wishes of the elders and the laws of her people, and manages to bring back her brother's body intact. Tragically, though, her brother is dead, so the trip does not work. And even though they bring it to the earth current does not revive it. Antigone is sentenced to. They say that they don't execute people in the last redoubt, but she is all but executed. They are going to stick her in an area of the redoubt with no food and no water and no other people until she starves to death. John C. Wright's Christianizations kind of starts at this point, where Antigone, instead of giving up and killing herself, decides that she's going to stay alive and manages to find a way to grow food and lives for several decades alone in the last redoubt. The story then ends on this beautiful up note where we learn that the person that she's telling this story to is in fact the reincarnation of her brother, who has managed to find her, and he's reincarnated several decades early because she exposed his intact body to the earth currents, and he was able to reincarnate before she died, so she was able to see him before she died. It's a beautiful ending, and the story is not one of the best stories in the Nightlands anthology. It's still an excellent story. I think my big criticism of it is that it drags. I think that parts of it could probably be cut out. But as a Christianization of the Antigone myth, it works wonderfully. There's a tension there that you need to resolve. And the tension is that Antigone did commit a sin. In this case, she endangered the entire last redoubt by venturing into the Nightland, which was reckless and dangerous, and she probably should have died. And she very well could have led to the deaths of people in the redoubt, but she did it out of love for her brother, which was a noble cause. In the original Sophocles play, the love for her brother ends up counting for nothing, and she dies. In fact, she gives up and kills herself, a very pagan death. But of course, in John C. Wright's Christianization, even in as desperate a situation as she's in, she refuses to kill herself and is rewarded for her love, even though there must be. I'm trying to think of how to put it. She is ultimately rewarded for her love for her brother, even after she is punished for her sin. So the sin doesn't go unpunished, but the love doesn't go unrecognized either. And her refusal to give up is itself something that is ultimately counted praiseworthy, which is something else that was not there in the original story. So This made me think how I was wondering what would John C. Wright do to Christianize the Orpheus myth, which I think is a story that could very much be Christianized. However, I do not know what it would be. I feel like there must be something you could do, but how would you make it dramatic and interesting? And how would you, in the same sense that Antigone has that tension, the Orpheus and Eurydice myth has a similar tension. Orpheus is ultimately attempting to defy the gods, and in this case, and in the Christian version of it, God himself, by going against his judgment and bringing somebody back from the dead. But he's going into the underworld itself out of love for his wife. And that's something that, even though on one hand you can't say that he is blameless for his hubris and arrogance, the love deserves to be rewarded in some way as well. So, how would you go about making how do you put it? Squaring that circle, I guess. How would you go about bringing that tension together into a way that's satisfyingly Christian and also dramatic?
So, uh, the way I thought is that part of it, instead of being just a simple, I'm going to rap battle Hades until he gives me my wife back. Um, by the way, I just want to give a shout out to Determined Sheepy showing up. Yes, the House in the Borderlands comic was terrible. So, the idea I had was basically he goes down into the underworld. I have no problem with personifying Hades because the Bible often personifies Hades itself. There's a certain spirit to it, or a lack, that is definitively itself. Um, Therefore, it exists. Whether or not one can travel on it is another question. Certainly, the pagans all agree that you can, and the hell portal is somewhere in Italy. Um, I guess the southern Italy, which I guess the Italians would also agree with that. So with the, I don't want to put it. So he goes down, and he essentially plays for the soul of his wife, that she should be returned. Uh, how do I want to, like, it's hard for me to say it properly, but essentially Hades gives up the dead, but it's one of those things where he says it in such a way that anyone who isn't blinded by love and sorrow and so on would not be deceived by it. If somebody says, of course, such and such who you cared for is dead, will return to you, return with you, behold, you know, something like that. You know what I mean? Like, give it that edge of sinister cynicism. Um, that would essentially turn what ostensibly should be a good thing into something that would be evil. What would happen is the character Orpheus um, is ascending back into southern Italy, hell of its own making, that he essentially discourses with an angel about death and life and the usage of his art and stuff like that. Like, it wouldn't be about the action per se, it would be about whether or not he's bringing back his wife and whether or not man should unmake what God has done, or, excuse me, allowed. In the myths, she is almost always killed either by an action of the gods or an action of nature, specifically a snake, if I recall correctly, because she is killed
Correct.
by a snake or by or it's sent by some god or goddess who even knows. Nobody cares. It would be Orpheus accepting the death and accepting that he, being a living man, even though he passed into Hades, no one's going to hold it against him. Uh, he still has life, but his love does not and must pass into the final judgment. He has to accept that he will not know what that final judgment is, but rather that if he stays faithful, because this assumes that Orpheus is Christian, we're going to say, he might meet her in heaven himself. But he also has to pass through first and in the natural course of his years. Essentially, he accepts he submits to God's will. Excuse me, that's the best way I can put it. Excuse me. I just realized I misspelled the title. I can't believe I did that.
There's one that's a way to do it. Now, one of the things worth talking about too is that what John did with his Antigone myth is that he used the Nightland as his metaphor for the land of the dead.
Yep.
For death. So let's pretend in this example, let's talk about, say, if Orpheus and Eurydice took place in the Nightland.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you were to do it like that, the story becomes very interesting, because it would have to be Eurydice somehow gets trapped in the Nightland, and it would have to be an act of almost random chance. Either, you mentioned she's in the original myth, she's either bitten by a snake, or the gods are the ones who take her. So either the forces of the Nightland somehow drag her in, or something random and tragic happens, and somehow Eurydice is trapped in the Nightlands and assumed dead.
Mm-hmm.
So in this version of the story, the question is, what do you do? What happens if you're Orpheus? Obviously, you would have the rescue attempt into the Nightlands, and Orpheus would probably be some sort of artist in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Can make him a lyre player, and perhaps his music is what allows him to, the creatures of the night leave him alone while he's playing his lyre. So
That's so
yeah,
like
I'm really thinking out loud right now. I don't have a specific point I'm going towards. I'm just trying to think of how you would do this story.
right. So there's there's a potential here. The only problem is that the forces of the Nightland are dread beings. They destroy and sup on souls. They devour one another on pretense and are in general nasty to the bone. They are not even comically evil or evil like some sort of Emperor Palpatine, where, he is evil for his own sake. They hate humanity purely, utterly, without regard to anyone or anything or even the logic of it. It is just hate. And that is something incredibly hard to communicate, as well as just hard to encompass. Like, there's no reason why he should receive his wife again, except that it is some horrid trick of the Nightland to destroy the last redoubt.
It's interesting you say that, because that was one of actually a plot line in The Cry of the Night Hound.
Yep.
One of, that exploration of various types of loves between people. One of the loves that's explored, even though Cry of the Night Hound, I would say, is primarily about a love between siblings, but another love explored there is the love between man and their pets, of all things.
Mm-hmm.
And the redeeming quality of that, because the story goes in there that her brother had taken a liking to the night hounds, the monstrous creatures who, were like gigantic evil dogs in the Nightland, and who were intelligent enough that they discoursed with Antigone at the end.
Yep.
And her brother had taken a liking to them. And it's actually a plot point that one of the night hounds had only done this. There were two. And they had both agreed, I think, initially that they were going to use this as their chance to break into the last redoubt.
Right.
Right?
Inspired by
They
the
were
forces
both
of darkness, so on and so forth.
right, and they were going to use this opportunity. Her foolish brother, who they were going to trick him into thinking they were his loyal pets, and trick someone into taking them into the last redoubt with them. And in fact, Antigone was to be that person. She took the bait, right?
Yep.
So that's the implication of the story. And then at the very end of it, one of the night hounds turns on the other and intentionally makes sure both of them are killed before they enter. And reveals to her that their original plan was to let the forces of the night into the last redoubt, but one of the two dogs had actually grown attached to their brother, and his love had redeemed him, and he chose to die instead and save the last redoubt at the last possible second, as well as save the body of her brother.
And
So
for
it's a
this, like, they aren't like explaining their story. One of the wolves, like, you see all this happening, and then like one of the male night hound says one word away before he dies, and that's it. Like, that's how little information that we can pull so much plot from. Sorry,
yes,
it's my favorite part of
it's
the
a
story.
beautiful
It's
end.
fantastic.
It is. It's a beautiful ending. Uh,
It is.
and again, this is like one of the weaker stories in the book, and it is a beautiful ending.
Look at this 9.7. What's this doing here?
You're right. That scene is absolutely fantastic. The dog.
Oh yeah.
You learn so much about their plan and what was going on there, and it's just such a great illustration too of like the power of love, and how everything about the story is all about how faith and love are ultimately, is it is she a fool for going after him? Is she right? Is she wrong? Was her brother really a fool? Or was her brother right or wrong? The answer is probably wrong. He probably shouldn't have done it, but on the other hand, it also does kind of work. The point being,
Mm-hmm.
in an Orpheus and Eurydice myth, so you're right. The question is, it would need to be some sort of trick to let Eurydice into the last redoubt in order for Orpheus to let the creatures of the night into the last redoubt.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose if I were going, this actually does kind of help though, because now that I'm thinking about it, if I were to Christianize the myth, there's one easy answer here, and that's that the original story is a lie. Eurydice was never going to come. She was never following him.
Yep. And that shows up too. John C. Wright comments on it in Tide to Tartarus, the better one. One of his, the sixth book in the Swan Knight Sun series, which, or I can't remember the real name of it. But like, he needs to finish it. He needs to finish it. Urgh, it's been so long. But
Yeah, I was looking forward to the next section too,
I know,
because I
right?
wasn't a big fan of the protagonist of that one, but I like Tomorrow Moth.
Oh yeah, no, that's gonna be great. I need to use the restroom. I'll be right back. Keep talking. Oh
Sure,
wait, no, that wasn't me.
I'll
Oh no, I'll be right back.
I'll keep talking. So yeah, in Tithe to Tartarus, John C. Wright does hint at it. That's one of his books in his Moth and Cobweb series. And in the story, John C. Wright does hint that the Eurydice following was a lie all along. So I suppose that if I were to Christianize the myth, that would be my big reveal, that Eurydice was never following Orpheus, and that she was never really coming, that the forces of the underworld were lying. And this fits pretty neatly with a Nightland version of it. Now, the question, though, is how do you Christianize such a story? So this is where things get more complicated. Ben's idea is discourse with an angel, where he kind of realizes, in a way, the error of his ways. But I don't think it's quite that simple. And the reason I don't think it's quite that simple is that in the Antigone story, Antigone was committing a sin as well. The thing is, you need to strike the balance there. She's committing a sin, but there's something inherently praiseworthy in her love for her son, and that ultimately gets rewarded in the story. Or her love for her brother, I mean, that ultimately gets rewarded in the story. So, in the Orpheus myth, while he's definitely in some sense committing a sin, uh, the other sense is that there is something praiseworthy about what he's doing as well. That going into the underworld because he loves his wife so much that he'll do anything for her. And I think that this does need to be rewarded in some way as well.
Yep,
The
I'm
You're
back, by
back,
the way.
excellent.
I heard the thing about rewarding. I assume you're talking about Eurydice?
Right. What I was saying is this. While I get your idea that he discourses with an angel and kind of realizes, in a way, the error of his ways, the problem with this to me is that when I think of if insofar as it is a problem, I don't have a solution, so it's not really anything. But uh, in his Christianization of the Antigone myth, what John does is kind of reconcile these two tensions here, where Antigone definitely sinned and definitely needed to be punished for her sin and is punished for her sin, but her love is not worthless, and that is ultimately rewarded. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that you have that same tension in the Orpheus myth. Like, yes, he could just kind of admit he's wrong, and that would, be right as well. But I think that misses the point of the Christianization of the myth, which is that you need to resolve that tension of the fact that there is something that's genuinely heroic and praiseworthy about a love so strong that it transcends death.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, how do you keep that tension? How do you keep both
Mm.
sides where he's rewarded for that love, but he is also criticized for that failing, that ultimate flaw? I think people get the fatal flaw of the Orpheus myth wrong, the idea of doubt. I don't think it's doubt, I think it's hubris. The idea that he could do it at all
Mm-hmm.
is the real fatal flaw of Orpheus. Which is why I think in a proper Christianization, just like in the Nightland story, I definitely would make the reveal that, she was never coming.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, again, John actually, funnily enough, kind of does this in Tides of Tartarus, which is funny.
Right.
So
I. Yeah.
John comes halfway there to.
Yeah, and not in a strange way either. Like, the reason why I sort of done the discourse, and by the way, I say discourse, but I mean actions or words or anything that would reveal the information they would discuss. I understand the hubris, and there's a certain element of it because usually in the myths I've read, like Apollo does it because Orpheus is styling too hard. Um, he's too good of a musician and he needs a little tragedy or something like that. And then Orpheus starts playing so mournfully that people start just killing themselves. Um, not really. They usually start sorrowing and wasting away and dying because they can't be bothered to do anything else but sorrow for Eurydice. Um, there's a whole bunch to it. Like if we confine ourselves to the Nightland, um, uh, where's the? I have so many tabs open. Determined Sheepy says sirens. It could be one of those things where he's called out into the night. He knows that his love was taken away by a vapor or by something. Determined Sheepy says, wouldn't you have to alter the myth just a bit? sort of as C.S. Lewis
You
Talia
would, yes.
phases. Yes.
The point is to alter the myth while keeping what... This is a word that I learned that I found to be from a class years and years ago that I found to be very useful in discourse without altering the myth theme of Orpheus and Eurydice, meaning without altering the central heart of the story.
Yep.
Which is what I think that John did in the Antigone myth. He made his own version of it while keeping to the heart of the story, which is, about sibling love and piety and about the fatal flaws of the characters involved, all those things.
Yep.
And it's the same thing. We would need... That's the key here. We're altering the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice by Christianizing it while keeping the myth theme of Orpheus and Eurydice.
Yeah.
So there are ways, one way you could say, wouldn't you Christianize by just not having him look back, which was one suggestion I got, and yes, okay, sure. You could do that, but...
But where is
no.
Christ in that? That's the thing.
Yeah,
Like,
but also no.
Yeah.
Because Christ in the Antigone, in John's version of the Antigone story, I think it's very obvious that, her love for her brother, and ultimately, there are actually two branches there, two major changes there, which is that she does not kill herself.
Mm-hmm.
She specifically stays alive and is rewarded for this by seeing her brother before she dies. So her patience, her refusal to give in is rewarded, and her devotion to her brother, even in defiance of the potential safety of her people and her king, who he calls the Castellan, but who is, for all intents and purposes, the king. In defiance of, and her love for her brother in defiance of the king is rewarded as well, which is something that's very Christian. Basically, he's kind of making the argument that Antigone was not right about everything, but she was right that there are certain things that are higher than the laws of man. And it takes a sort of ironclad faith to be rewarded and to see the fruits of your labors. She had faith that what she was going to be doing for her brother would not be for nothing, and in the end that faith was proven right. She wasn't let off the hook for the bad things that she did, because Antigone in John's version of the story is an extremely flawed character, and her flaws are acknowledged, but ultimately it's her faith and her love that is rewarded. So that's what needs to happen here. Orpheus's flaws need to be acknowledged. His hubris, his obsession, even
Mm-hmm.
with this, which become to an unhealthy degree that it's starting to harm other people, need to be acknowledged. But his faith and that what he's doing will ultimately matter, and his love for his wife need to be rewarded in some way, but without losing that recognition of Orpheus's own flaws.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I recommend to listeners at home, I recommend Hades Town. It's quite good. Good music.
I was thinking as you spoke, maybe he's banished from the night. Banished from the
Last Redoubt.
The Last Redoubt, and has to survive there, coming across various events and settings, until eventually he has a choice. He sees his love beckoning, singing to him from the House of Silence, where no one ever escapes, and once you enter, no one will ever find you again. And he has a choice between entering into the house to be with her, versus some good he could do. Perhaps he can save somebody with his singing. Like, he has a choice. He must save, let's say that... Did Orpheus have a brother in the myth? Let me see.
I don't recall. Let me look that up. I mean, he's the son of Apollo, which means he probably had a dozen brothers.
So many brothers.
Because all of the gods had 20 sons.
Right. He had a brother named Linus. Let me see. And he is incredibly unimportant. Let's see. Well, no, he's considered the inventor of melody and rhythm, which means that essentially he invented rap. He taught music to Orpheus, his brother, and Hercules, and then he went to Thebes and became a Theban for reasons I don't really understand, but whatever. He might have been a personification of the Threnody, a dirge of lamentation, and, something sung over the dead. I'm trying to figure it out.
Because one day I would love to write something involving the Orpheus and Eurydice myth, which I always thought was one that retained a lot of its power even in the modern day. It's so dramatically set up. Everything about it is just very dramatic in the Orpheus and Eurydice myth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's also a thing where he's the son of Apollo and Samath, whose father was king of Argos. Fearing her father, she exposed the child, who was found and killed by sheepdogs. For this reason, Apollo sent vengeance to punish the Argives, and then apparently the king was Corybus. Who's Corybus? An Argosian. Yeah. So yeah, Corybus kills Vengeance, which is absolutely kick-ass. And then I'm just sort of thing. Yeah, so he's like, yeah, so Apollo sends a plague to ravage the city because they killed Vengeance, the personification of vengeance. So he goes to Delphi to figure out what to do about it, and Delphi goes, okay, you can't go home, but what you can do is you take this tripod and you're just going to walk with it until you have to put it down, and there you're going to found a city. And he founded Tripodiskoi, which is a little city. Yeah.
Well, okay then.
Yeah, that's everything to do with the brother of Orpheus, named Linus. So in this case,
I feel like just write a comic story called Linus, Orpheus's brother. And it's just about, like, nobody gives a crap about him.
Right. It's like, I taught Orpheus, though.
And they go, oh, Linus. They go, yeah, They go, wait a minute. Aren't you Orpheus's brother? Oh, man, Orpheus. I love his singing. And then Linus is just angry because he's like, I taught him how to sing, right? It was me.
I invented this.
Just goes, whatever. Yeah. And everybody's just like, whatever, man. Get away. We want Orpheus. His wife died.
Right. And it's so sad. Have you heard him sing about it? Yes.
But and Linus is just so over it. It's like, enough about friggin' Eurydice. So sad.
Come on, man. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. It's great. So in this case, he is banished from the night. banished and sent to the Nightlands because of the influence his music is having on the people, driving them to madness and sorrow and death and so on and so forth. In this case, I would have his brother Linus come after him. Even though his brother is preserving himself with the music of the lyre, it is really the Nightlands. See, here's the thing. I feel like I'm just rehashing parts of the Antigone story and Cry of the Night Hound, and not actually doing anything like interesting with it. And I'm not sure how to even like finish it, because it's like, so he has a choice between Eurydice, who is within the House of Silence at the door. If only he would pull her out, she would be free. Versus saving his brother from the Night Hounds, who he knows he can charm. Night Hounds and Abhumans, who he knows he can charm with his music, and so he chooses his brother over Eurydice. Who might even be a false siren.
Want me to just go on John C. Wright's blog now and just ask him?
Yes.
Literally, I think I just saw him put a comment on his blog, so he's on there now. Let's just do it. Let's get him on the show.
Go for it. Actually, I'm gonna message his wife. I'm gonna message Yaji. See if he's up and around.
Yeah, do it. Just be like, we're trying to figure out what John C. Wright would do here. Is he available? I'm gonna go on a post, and I may annoy him because he may say to me, "Why are you commenting this on a post that has nothing at all to do with it?" Because his latest post is a Last Crusade post,
right?
And his latest comment is from about 27 minutes ago.
Just be sure to put down out of topic, off of topic. Excuse me.
Yeah, that makes everything okay. Immediately, people are like, "Oh, never mind. He said it was off topic, so that makes it fine."
Yeah, exactly.
God, I hate myself as I'm writing this, and I'm debating. I'm in the middle of it going like, "This is so rude," but I want to do it. Tell you what, if he gets mad, I'll just blame you. I'm gonna write it. So, I don't know how many people are listening right now. Probably not a lot. 2.
And yeah, it's a very important 2. I love you both.
One of them might be me.
Okay, so it's you and Determined Sheepy. Determined Sheepy,
so
I love you as a brother
possibly
in Christ.
2, but definitely one person who is listening at home. What we are doing right now is we are trying to see if John C. Wright will tell us how John C. Wright would Christianize the Orpheus story. We are doing this in the most half-assed way possible by going on his blog and saying, "Hey, what would you do?" And also double-checking with his wife to see if maybe he's interested in saying something. We put no planning into this. We did not intend to have him come on, nor do we expect him to answer. But, why not?
Yep.
What do we have to lose?
And honestly, he's been a little bit silent and working on things recently. So it might be good to get him up and roused with some morsel.
He has, whatever his new project is on his blog.
All Men Dream of Earth Women?
Yeah,
that's old,
it. All
actually.
Men Dream of Earth Women.
That's been around. Yeah. He's just refreshing it for the modern day.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep. I've been a Patreon supporter of his since he first started it up, so I just I'm aware. I'm just kind of aware of what he's done. I'm actually I love John C. Wright, but I wish something new would come out, and I want like Swan Knight Sun and the Mad Scientist's Apprentice to come out, and Star Quest. Like Star Quest is everything I've read of Star Quest, and I've spent $80 to buy all 4 books before they were even like fully plotted out yet. And everything I read is the most fantastic, space fantasy I've ever read before, and it is the least interesting thing I want from him. And it's the best space fantasy I've ever read. I haven't written it at all. I don't know why I said written. I've got my own space fantasies that I'm working on, and they're pretty good.
Right.
They're pretty good.
This is what I wrote. Off topic. Right now, Ben Wheeler and I are on the Superversive SF live stream. We are currently discussing how John C. Wright would Christianize the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. If you have an idea, we're both very curious as to what the answer is. Should I hit post?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. It's on there. Let's see if he reads it.
Yep. And we'll update you guys in the live stream if anyone responds, whether this week or next week. Or if he just bans you. No, he's not like that.
Yeah. He wouldn't ban me because I'm not breaking one of his rules, but also, like, even I'm like, I probably shouldn't have done that.
Listen, Anthony.
Everybody's in the middle of a discussion on topic on his intelligent political posts about turning back the corruption afflicting Wall Street. And I'm just like, hey, we're on a live stream about a topic completely unrelated to what we were talking about.
In this case, Orpheus plays his lyre so beautifully, so wonderfully.
It convinces John to join the Superversive live stream.
No, I was going to say that he convinces all the Wall Street bankers to jump off a building. But, we can do that too. That is also in the realm of possibility. But dead bankers, though. Ooh.
In case the people listening couldn't tell, we didn't have a specific plan for this week.
Yeah, it's true. Part of the thing is that we're working on specific projects, and the most interesting things happening to us are like, things we don't really want to talk about as much as you people would like, because we're not a real live stream, and we're not a drama stream. So it's like, I keep my business private.
Yeah, I'm not talking about my job. I'm not going to talk about my job. I'll talk about my writing, but I won't talk about my job.
You kill so many people. Of course you don't want to talk about it. But,
I lie awake at night, see the choppers flying across, like that Bert and Ernie meme where they show Ernie staring into the distance and there are explosions in the background, or Bert in the distance, and there are explosions in the background. And that's me.
So the best one is Bert lies awake at night, dreading how Ernie would trigger his PTSD. Ernie lies awake at night, waiting for the chopper to fall through the roof.
Bert and Ernie memes are A++, I have to admit.
Yeah.
They're some of my favorites.
Yep.
Sesame Street memes generally are pretty great.
Yep. It's like so I'm gonna actually take a second here. Memes are almost like the modern myth. Like, not the super seriously, like, you take an idea.
I think you're being serious, but it's still funny.
Oh, it's absolutely hilarious. It's keck worthy. The meme holds a bit of truth, an idea. Don't give in to your hubris. Be a good person. Don't lie, etc., etc., etc. And expands it out to a funny image. Like, let's say a Bert and Ernie image, where in reality, Sesame Street's just a parody of it. I don't know. Hold on a second. I'm gonna find something. I'm gonna find a really good meme that won't get me banned from here. That's actually something I have to consider.
So, true story. One day I was literally flipping channels just like on TV, and Sesame Street was on. And the skit they were doing, this was years ago. Remember when the Spider-Man musical it was a thing, and there kept being injuries to the people involved
Yep.
on it, and they kept having to cancel it. And the skit they did was actually like non-ironically, like legitimately hilarious. It was like just some guy in the audience, and you would see, and Grover came out, and he goes, "I'm Spider Monster, watch me fly to the sky," and like jumps on the guy in the audience. And the guy's like, "What are you doing? You're not flying. You just jumped into the audience." He goes, "I'm sorry, sir. It's still Bono's 21st opening night. We're still ironing out the kinks." And I laughed my ass off. I'm like, that is a non-ironic, like, no joke, no BS. That was legitimately funny.
Right. No, that is genuinely hilarious.
Everything about, just from the guy going, "Watch me fly to the sky," and then he just jumps onto the guy in the audience. And even the line after, "It's still Bono's 21st opening night. We're ironing out the kinks."
Right. It's like no kid's gonna really get that, but that is absolutely hilarious. So I'm gonna real quick throw up a meme. I'm looking for a very specific meme. I just haven't found it yet. It shows a picture of a cat. This is a history meme, right? And it shows a cat in Roman armor, legionary, with a painting of Rome behind it. It's the teary-eyed cat, and it goes, "Hello, my name is Augustus. Today I'm gonna conquer the Rhine." Germans are giggling in the back. "Please, and he starts sobbing. I am incredibly amused by that image. I couldn't tell you why it's so funny, but it is absolutely hilarious. All right, so let me find the actual thing I'm looking for. So it's that, "Hey King, you drop this," and he's holding out a crown. You know that meme? I use it all the time. Okay, good. There's the one with Doe going, "Please God, make the Pope a Catholic," but I won't post that there. I won't post it. I'm just gonna talk about it. Where is it? It's such a good meme. Skipping all the ones about Doge murdering thoughts. Skip the possum memes. The 100,000 possum memes. Where is it? "Hey King, you drop this."
Now,
I'll find it. It's important to me.
yeah, it is pretty interesting though that you mentioned that John mentions the Orpheus myth and ties with Tartarus. I'd forgotten that, and you're right, he does.
Yep, he actually mentions.
And
yeah, go for it.
And his take in it is one which I had kind of agreed with separately from that, which is that in a Christianization of the myth, Orpheus would never be able to come back. There was never, it was all a lie all along.
Yep. So like, concerning whether or not he can come back, I don't think that's as important to the Christianization of the myth. He has to sacrifice him in the way that we're doing it with the Nightland, right? Saving his brother, or saving, quote unquote, saving Eurydice. Eurydice. It's not that he's never going to come back. It's that events happen that he can't come back. Does that make sense?
Yes. This is something that I would definitely write one day if I came up with a proper idea for it. So the way I'm going to discuss Hadestown a little bit since I've brought it up a couple of times, and this was what got me back on the subject of Orpheus and Eurydice, which was something that I had thought over and tried to figure out for years and never did anything with. And then I heard Hadestown and I enjoyed it. I think Hadestown sets the story in like Depression era, pseudo USA ish, and it tries to parallel the story. Actually, I think quite brilliantly. It parallels the story of Orpheus and Eurydice with the story of Hades and Persephone. And Orpheus, in this version of the story, the world is out of whack because Hades and Persephone's relationship is on the rocks and it's affecting the weather. And Orpheus claims that he's going to write. Yeah, well, it makes sense, doesn't it?
No, it does.
With Persephone.
Yeah.
And Orpheus claims he is going to write a song that will be so perfect and beautiful it will fix the weather. And Eurydice is skeptical until Orpheus sings for her and it causes like the flowers to grow. And this causes her to fall in love with him. But Orpheus becomes so obsessed with coming up with this song that he can't find a way to properly support Eurydice. So
she's
Eurydice
a Greek woman. What does she need support in?
What was that?
Nothing. I was making a very tasteless joke about Greek women.
Oh. Yeah, alright.
You know, like, Greeks was one of those...
She is Greek.
Well, like,
in
no...
this version of the story, I mean, but I don't know
right,
if
right.
is Greek.
Well, like, the Greeks were famously misogynist. In like, the true... Like, not in, like, the feminist sort of misogynist, but, like, in kind of, like...
hilariously so, actually.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I once did...
Go on.
When I did the...
When you did what? I'm going to give him a second. So
one of the modeled, like, Greek extra... It was Icarus giving a monologue as he fell from the sky, and he pauses and addresses the audience, and it was a comic monologue, and I still remember most of it, because it's a really funny monologue. But he goes, you're probably wondering what the theme of the show is. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't the theme of the show that women are responsible for everything wrong in the world? And you are absolutely correct. That is, yes. That is definitely a major theme here, but it's not the only theme. Like, I just remember that line. Like, he's going, I know what you're thinking. Isn't it women? And you're right, it is. It's all women's fault.
That's beautiful. That's honestly hilarious. Socrates has a famous quote where he goes, if you marry a good woman, you'll have a good life. If you marry a bad woman, you'll become a philosopher. And then the reaction is Socrates' wife, yo, what the F?
Yeah. Yo, WTF?
Right.
That was pretty funny.
So I found...
yeah, I know the meme.
Yep. Where is he? There it is. Determined Sheepy has a good point. The meme I put out about Augustus trying to tearfully take the wine back from the Germans is quite true to life. The cat is weepy and appears quite sickly, which was basically Augustus to a T. Sure, he had the will to turn Rome into an empire on the shoulders of a dead and stabbed Julius Caesar. However, he was quite sickly and kind of out there. So with speaking of Romans, some girl is doing possum illustrations, and I go, I want a toga-wearing possums stabbing a possum Julius Caesar under a statue of Possum Pompey the Great. And I go, please. And then she goes, I do commissions. And I was like, I'm actually going to ask her what the price is. Because I want this more than life itself.
Whatever the cost, it's all worth it.
You're right. Like, just to bring this into existence. Anyway, so I put up the image, hey king, you drop this, showing a crown. Part of it is that the best memes are about truth. The reason why the left can't meme isn't because they're inherently unfunny. They are. Or that they have actually terrible artistic skills, because whatever true natural talent they might have had has been destroyed by academia and probably Satan. Definitely Satan. Which is also true. It's that their memes are not connected to truth. For example, watch out, SS Trump. Here comes the Joe Pedo.
Oh, that one was funny.
That one's funny. I don't know whether it's truly theirs
Honestly,
or
that
not.
seems like a right wing. To be honest, that seems like a right wing meme.
I
I could imagine making that.
I could imagine making it too, but like the thing is, I can't tell what's reality or what's not anymore. So I wouldn't be
Here
able to
comes
tell the difference
Joe
anyway.
Pedo. It's pretty funny.
It is.
I think that it's actually. I think that one's a right wing troll meme.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't
But
know.
the left is really bad at memeing, so who even knows?
But the thing is, it's the truth of it though. They lack truth in their memes, so they tend to be walls of text trying to justify a position, or they are just insane. Just like how the best myths are an element of truth in them, without lies or anything like that. Especially with women ruining everything. Just saying. Just putting it out there. Anyway, just putting it out there. Just, Icarus is right. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. I don't know where I'm going with this joke. I'm sorry.
Are we kidding?
Are we kidding? So with I'm sorry. Like, I know this is probably very bad of me, but how the Greeks approached life is incredibly amusing to me. Like, it's like funny haha. Like, the Romans are dignified, grave, incredibly murdery. But then there's the Greeks with Alcibiades, like, going over everyone, sleeping with everyone he can get his hands on, and just in general corrupting the youth. And then he gets banished. He looks out from his castle and he goes, "Hey guys, I know you're gonna fight this guy. Don't." And they're like, "Screw you, Alcibiades. You sexy beast. You looking beautiful even in your old age." And they march off and die in the thousands. And he's like, "I told you guys."
There's a great, there's a great line in the Iliad, one of my favorites actually. Because I remember reading, on Quora or some question and answer site, somebody asked, did the Greeks consider Zeus a good king? Because nowadays, the revisionist history of Zeus is that Zeus was an asshole. This is correct. But it's a good question. Did the Greeks actually think he was a good king? And the answer is, well, if you had asked them, yes they did. But the thing is that they thought, the whole thing was just thought of in a completely different way from us. For example, there is a scene in the Iliad that I actually think is really suggestive, and I can't remember the details of it, I'm afraid, but these elements of the scene always stuck out to me. It was one of the goddesses, I want to say Athena or Aphrodite, goes up to Zeus and says, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something. I think what you're doing to the Trojans, who I favor, is unfair. We just helped a town that you favored, so I think it's only right that it's my turn." And Zeus says, "Okay, wait, hold on here, slow your roll. We're gonna pause and remember something. I get to do whatever I want because I'm Zeus. And what you do," he's like, he goes, "Here's what I'm gonna do. I am gonna grant your request because I feel like doing it. It's fair enough, you said it's your turn or whatever, but I want you to remember something. If I want to do something, I get to do it because I'm Zeus. If you get to do something, you get to do it if I say you could do it because I'm Zeus." And it's do you understand me? Because I want to make this very clear. We are not equals. I am above you. And she's like, "Yes, I understand. You are being perfectly clear right now."
Right.
Zeus is like, okay, I will help you out then. You may
Please
go.
don't kill my mortal
And
children.
yeah. And that's kind of like when you talk about how Zeus rapes all of these people, I think that would have honestly been a concept kind of foreign to the Greeks.
Right.
Because to them, it's like, what do you mean rapes? He's Zeus. You
Right.
know, you don't say no to Zeus. And if you
Honestly,
did say no to Zeus, you deserved it. So,
right.
whatever happened to you, you deserved because he's Zeus.
Honestly, I don't really recall any woman that he kind of forced himself on. Apollo tries, um, a few different people try, like lesser gods who aren't Zeus. Hades actually doesn't either. Um, Poseidon, I think, does. But
Hades
Poseidon,
is Hades is a very interesting figure in Greek mythology.
he is.
Uh, they were all terrified of Hades for obvious reasons, but they also like had this weird respect for him. Though
Right.
again, there's a little bit of revisionist history going on here in that part of it comes from Percy Jackson, I think,
Yep.
which is that like Zeus was actually this asshole and he was just a terrible person. And the Greeks did not think of it that way. They thought of Zeus as the king.
Yep.
And the king was able and had the right to do things that other people just did not have.
Yep.
So betting mortal women, was not something that was like Zeus was a horn dog or whatever. Was not something that would have occurred to them. It was more like, well, yeah, he could. He's a god. He's
Yep.
the king of the gods.
Yep.
He could do what he wants. Is he a good king? Well, he's very strong. He wins most of his battles. The Olympians fight all the time, but he manages to keep control. Sure, he's a good king.
Yeah.
What a weird question. Like, I feel like the question is something that wouldn't have occurred to them as readily. That's why that section in the Iliad was so interesting to me, because it was somebody who was kind of making that assumption of, hey, Zeus is a person like us, and Zeus is kind of setting the record straight. No, I'm not. I am
Right.
very much not a person like you. I am Zeus.
Yep.
And it's important that you remember that. So it's kind of hard to look at Greek, we need to remember our biases when we're looking back at these older myths. Things like, Hades kidnapping Persephone. At the time, what Hades did to Persephone was considered one of the healthier relationships in Greek mythology. I mean,
If
it was
not the
more
healthiest.
like, yeah, it was more like Hades paid the bride price, and Persephone, of course, who was going to get married to someone anyway, was lucky enough to get married to Hades, and Hades even lets her return to the surface for half the year.
Treats her like a
he didn't
person.
have to do. Yeah, treats her like a person, and he takes her opinions very much into account.
Yeah.
Persephone being one of the only people who could calm Hades' moods.
Right.
So there was something like this whole idea of, he kidnapped Persephone is like an idea I think would have been kind of foreign to the Greeks themselves. They would have been like, what do you mean kidnapped? She was his wife.
Right.
Yeah.
That was just to keep the mother-in-law out of it. That's actually
which is actually true.
Right. Oh man, lucky guy. But we're feeling proper Greeks today. Though I am proudly Anglo. So
the German sheepy is back. Hello.
howdy.
I wonder who the two other people were in the chat with him gone. Hey, people listening, if you're there, say hi in the chat. I'm curious. I'll go in and say hi.
Hello. Metal grinder blew a fuse. That's actually pretty metal. Metal grinders. I mean, that sounds like an instrument that Trent Reznor would play. He shows up, starts mumbling into a microphone how God is dead, and we're like, Trent, just go away. What's wrong with you? Get out of here. You bring me closer to God. Dude, the last verse was literally about how God was dead or something. I can't remember the whole song. Um, I don't believe you're close to him at all, sir. I believe that you're being facetious or something in your gravelly, wonderful, terrible, wonderful voice.
Now, Greek mythology is something. I was a fan of the Percy Jackson series growing up. I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't my favorite series, but I did like it. Uh, However, I was one of those weirdos who was already into Greek mythology. In fact, I was into. Let me think. I had like read through several books on Greek mythology,
Mm-hmm.
Roman, which what everybody says about it is absolutely correct. It's literally just a copy of Greek mythology with the names changed, and don't let anybody lie and tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
They're wrong. That's what it is.
There's
Uh,
there are slight differences. Like Ares was also a god. Mars was also a god of forests, but he was also a god of war, and he was very much a Ares in every other
okay, look,
thing.
there were differences. Actually, Ares is an interesting difference because Ares in Greek mythology was kind of a joke of a god, and the Greeks admired Athena more, who was like the goddess of battle strategy.
Yep.
Uh, the Romans admired Mars, and they were big into Mars. But what's weird is they had the same stories for both of them. So
Yep.
I guess it's a matter of interpretation. I don't know, but
Considering
whatever.
that quite often a Roman would march for a year through Gaul, only to like come back and immediately try to murder his enemies, just shows like how bloody minded and determined these people were.
Yeah,
It's
the
yeah. One
the
of
because like Sparta, you would think would have Ares as their patron god, but no, they had Athena was actually the patron god of Sparta as well.
huh. I keep forgetting
Because
that she was the patron god of like I keep forgetting what patron god was what.
battle strategy.
No, I meant like which city had what patron god. Because I know that
Oh, the only
Athens.
two I know are Athens and
Oh, okay.
Sparta.
Because I know that
I
there's a
knew Sparta.
yeah,
It stuck out to me because like they're always portrayed as having this rivalry with Athens, which they did.
yeah,
Because they did,
yeah.
and they actually had the same patron goddess, which I found interesting.
There's a famous story about Athens where they were trying to name their city, and they had a choice between Poseidon and Athena, and they said, okay, well, we'll settle this properly. Whoever gives the best gift to the city will be our patron god. And so um, Poseidon gave them a saltwater spring, completely useless. Uh, but Athena gave them olive trees. And so they chose to name their city after Athena.
Yeah, I would too.
That is a 100% true story, I swear.
Uh, yeah, the I had read the Greek and Roman myths because again they're the same. But I'd read the Greek and Roman myths of my own accord. I'd read the Norse myths of my own accord, the
Yep.
Egyptian myths, Aztec,
Yeah.
and I feel like I'm missing something.
The Egyptian myths are always a little weird. They have this weird, like almost raw quality to them that I can't really properly put my finger on.
They are weird, but they're interesting.
Yeah, like raw
And my
ages, which is a fascinating idea for your chief god. Like
one more time.
raw ages.
Oh yes,
Like he is explicitly an old geriatric god by the end of it. Towards the end of the myths and stuff like that.
yeah. He Odin ages too, though. Odin is an old man in Norse myths. I mean, in because in the Norse myths, it's all about how everybody's going to die, and we're all doomed. So you might as well eat a lot of meat and kill a lot of people on the way.
Yep. People who
But
step to
Odin
you.
is an interesting. Odin. Yeah, Odin is interesting though because Odin, the whole thing with one eye. In the Thor movies, he has one eye because he lost an eye in the Giant Wars, which is completely ludicrous and completely contrary to, as we were talking about myth theme earlier,
Yep.
completely contrary to the myth theme of Odin and of the story of Odin, which is
Yep.
that he wanders the earth looking for wisdom and gave up an eye in exchange for, more wisdom or something. Can't remember the exact reasoning, but it was something along those lines. And he wanders the earth as an old man, so in the Norse myths, everybody is going to die and we're all doomed.
Yep.
Norse myths kind of suck.
Yeah,
I
they do.
mean, they don't. They're interesting,
They're
but they
badass.
suck because, yeah, it's not fun. They're not fun myths. Uh,
Yep. Can I reach this?
Greek myths are cooler.
Yeah. And like they've got this weird kind of not epic quality, but how do I want to put it? Um, this quality of big, big whatever energy. Like it's like Zeus sitting there, doing Zeus things. I got on it. And it's like, so what, they're unapologetically themselves. And I find that fascinating compared to a lot of the other myths or like the weird death focus of the where is it? There it is. Of the Norse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the Egyptian myths are definitely have their own flavor to them.
Yep. I haven't received this.
As do the Norse myths. The Norse myths and Ragnarok's coming for you, baby. It's
Baby.
happening.
Land of the ice and snow.
On the topic of Christianization of myths, uh, Gene Wolfe, that was it, actually managed to Christianize the Norse myths in his Wizard Knight series. The only
Did he?
problem with Go ahead.
No, I just was commenting.
Yeah, this was according to John C. Wright. The only problem with the Wizard Knight series is my problem with all of Gene Wolfe's stuff, which is that I can't read it because it's like impossible to read. I am not a fan of Gene Wolfe.
I haven't read anything of his that I can really remember. I know I've been in the same room as some of his stuff. I just can't remember it.
uh,
And
all right. So Gene Wolfe, I have a love-hate relationship with Gene Wolfe. Everybody I know, like every single human being that I know who has read Wolfe, worships the ground he walks on. Just loves him. And I can't do it. I can't get through Gene Wolfe, and I have tried. I have finished a novel by him, so at least I could say that I've done that. Which
yeah,
was The Sorcerer's House. The Sorcerer's House I found to be quite okay.
it
And I
is
thought it was,
adequate.
and quoted on the back cover of the book is my quote, "It was fine. I guess it was pretty good." You find this in blurbs at bookstores.
Right.
Then John C. Wright. This is a real thing that happened. I'll see if I can find his post. I read it. That was my opinion of it. I put it aside. Then I found on John C. Wright's blog a review of The Sorcerer's House, where John C. Wright said it had one of the most clever ending plot twists that he had ever seen. And it was something that I had either completely missed or completely misunderstood or forgotten about. Because I said, like, see, I did not get any of this out of the book.
Right.
And that is my problem with Gene Wolfe in a nutshell. I am literally not smart enough for him. Like, his book, the book of the new sun, and his son books. I've
Yeah.
tried to read The Shadow of the Torturer several times. I couldn't do it. It was like it's so difficult to read and understand, and the language is freaking boring. What? Who said that? I don't know. I'm just saying. Like the other one though was his Book of the Long Sun. I bought that specifically because Josh Young had said that the Book of the Long Sun was sort of like if Gene Wolfe wrote Father Brown, which is a G.K. Chesterton creation, like
Mm-hmm.
his version of Sherlock Holmes. I like the Father Brown mysteries; they're quite good. So I said, "Oh, hey, that sounds interesting," and I couldn't get through it. I could not finish the book. It was so boring. Uh,
Right.
and I couldn't, but more importantly, I could not understand what was happening. So, The Sorcerer's House was one of the easier books to understand by Wolfe, which is why I was smart enough to finish it.
Mm-hmm.
And the Wizard Knight series is another one that's considered an quote unquote easier book by Wolfe. But when I read it, it had a very strange feeling to it. It was very surreal and dreamlike. And I get that that was the point, and that everybody will tell you that that was the point, and that Gene Wolfe loves his unreliable narrators, and they're all correct about this. But at the same time, it made it very hard for me to get invested in the characters in this story. And I came away from the night, once again, not having been able to finish book one of the Wizard Knight series. But supposedly, and Wikipedia confirms this as well, he manages to somehow reconcile Norse and Christian mythology.
It's
How does he do it? I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
I have not read it, so I wouldn't be able to say. Just a second. What's up, Chris?
No, to make sure you're not saying you know something.
Yeah. Appreciate you looking out for me.
The German Sheepy says, have we got a response from the esteemed Wright on the earlier subject? Good question. Let's check.
I did get a response for from that artist, and she said that it would cost about $45 to
Oh, that's not that bad. I would have guessed closer to 100.
right.
I'm afraid that we have nothing from John as of now. I doubted
Yeah.
we would.
Nothing from his wife either.
It's possible I might have to get back to you with John next week.
Yeah, we can make this a part two-parter. Because I actually enjoy talking about this. Because like, okay, how about this? Next week we'll talk about Christianizing Norse myths. Or is that too easy? Is that too easy for you?
I have no idea how you would do it, so it's certainly not easy. I suppose I could read the Wizard Knight series, but I tried to do that once, and it did not go well.
I've already tried.
Yeah, can we just talk about... Yeah, can we just talk about... That's the one thing. You know how everybody has a thing? I know there's a gentleman, like, who I know, who I respect greatly, who's in, like, Writer Center Authors and the Superversive Discord, who can't stand Tolkien. That's my thing, and that's Gene Wolfe.
I'm kidding. Don't worry about it. I don't want to know.
I'll tell you who, because I don't even know you. I don't think you know him very well, though. I think you'll recognize him if I told you. But he was not a fan of Tolkien, which is fine.
Right.
And I know people who aren't fans of C.S. Lewis. My thing is Gene Wolfe.
Yeah.
Everybody I know adores Gene Wolfe, and I just can't get into him. I can't do it.
I dig it. I I admit I have not really read Gene Wolfe seriously enough to have an opinion, other than I've never finished one of his books. That's the only opinion I've
I
got.
own, well, here's the problem too. I own several of his books because I have tried to finish several. Like, I
Right.
bought the Book of the Long Sun because I was told, oh no, this one's different because it's like Gene Wolfe doing Father Brown, and I found it, like, unreadable. I brought the Book of the New Sun because that was like his magnum opus, and I found it unreadable. I brought the Fifth Head of Cerberus, and I didn't find it unreadable so much as just kind of boring. I wasn't really that into it. And I bought The Sorcerer's House, which I actually managed to finish, and I found okay. One thing about The Sorcerer's House that I vaguely remember is I I couldn't even spoil it if I wanted to because the spoiler would be so complicated and depends on you knowing the plot. So what I'm going to say is vague by necessity, just because I would need to go into way too much backstory to make it not vague. But like, I vaguely remember thinking that the twist at the end of it was, oh, that's a twist. And then, like, other people going how, like, the twist was genius and explaining in detail why. And I couldn't disagree with anything they were saying. Like, every word they wrote was correct. But I read the book and I was just like, I don't know, I thought it was fine. It was a good book, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Every word
I'm
coming
not
out of
gonna
your
read.
mouth is technically correct, and I do not have a good argument against it. Something like that.
Yeah, pretty much. That's also my opinion on analysis generally, because I have long been a defender of objective quality and objectivity in analysis.
Yep.
So I am perfectly willing to accept the fact that Gene Wolfe is in fact brilliant, and I am in fact not smart enough for him. Uh, if that is the case, then to all of you people who enjoy Gene Wolfe, what I will tell you is go with God. I have. I'm not going to, like, argue you off of him or anything. I
Right.
have argued with people. One of the big things was Jeffro was trying to argue, I think, that Tolkien was like the beginning of the postmodern slide into the disastrous modern fantasy.
Right.
And
I don't agree with that, but
I actually, no, I don't agree with that. That was one thing I actually, like, was arguing with Jeffro about that. Uh, and I was arguing with Jeffro about that in the objective sense, where I'm like, okay, so, you know, here's where I disagree with you. And I wrote, it was like a minor thing for a while, and I think most people ended up kind of agreeing with me when all was said and done, because it was more like, I get that you prefer older fantasy, that you're disappointed in the fantasy that followed in Tolkien's wake, which you should be, since most of it was
yes.
terrible.
Yes.
Sword of Shannara, David Edding stuff, and whatever. At least
Yeah.
supposedly. I
Sword of
haven't read it, but
Shannara
I've.
is serviceable, but I can't even remember much about it. That's the problem. I've read it.
The
I've
thing
read
that
it.
postmodern fantasy postmodern fantasy comes from modern fantasy, and modern fantasy is all pale imitations of Tolkien with none of the richness that he added into his works. And Tolkien became so big and popular, he kind of overrode what used to be big in fantasy, which had a lot more variety and a lot more, blah blah blah, all of that stuff. You get it. I agree with all of that. That's all correct. What I do not agree with is blaming Tolkien for it.
Yep. So,
I
like,
do not
just
think
for the
that the Lord of the
perspective,
Rings featured.
you're absolutely right. Just for perspective, it's like blaming Flavius Aetius for holding back the Huns and causing the fall of Rome to whoever, Goths or whoever sacked it last. I can't remember.
Oh yeah, the Visigoths, I think. Yeah.
No, that was
No, I
Alaric.
think. Come
Well,
on.
okay, it's like blaming Stilicho for the sacking of Rome. Stilicho defeated Alaric in several battles and wanted to kill him immensely. Uh, and yet he was never given that opportunity, and he was executed for false treason. He was not a traitor, as far as I can tell. And he was executed for treason, quote unquote, before anything could happen. Like, Tolkien is the last Roman standing before the flood of barbarians.
Well, here's where I do get what Jeffro was saying. The idea that Tolkien represented something different from the fantasy that came before him is correct.
Yep.
What I disagree with is that there's anything wrong with this. I mean,
Yep.
there was a lot of variety in fantasy. Tolkien's just happened to become really, really popular. But what, are you going to blame him for that?
Yeah. It's
That's
like,
hardly fair.
right. It's like William Hope Hodgson invents Christian cosmic horror. Like, are you gonna blame him for Lovecraft? Like, it's not. You can't, or not Lovecraft. Oh my goodness. No, I can't remember. Basically, for modern stupid eldritch horror, that's terrible. Like, you can't really blame somebody who's the grandfather or something or the father of something for the pale imitators that can't hold a candle to your old dad. Like, I don't know. You're blaming the father or the hero of something for something that just isn't their fault.
Right. Like, his argument that I remember it, and I wrote something on Superversive Sci-Fi responding, and eventually Jeffro kind of was like, I get your point, so I'm not going to push the issue because I feel like it would do more harm than good. Turn people away who are, like, on our side, as it were. His argument was that, The Lord of the Rings does not feature explicit Christianity. This is something that Tolkien was very open about. He did not want to put explicit Christianity in it because it was a fantasy world and it had its own mythology, and he would have considered it dishonest.
Mm-hmm.
What I disagreed with, he said that maybe he did it, that he thought Tolkien was, that this led to people not making Christianity a part of their fantasy, and that it then became like a convention of fantasy, and that Tolkien might have done it because he considered it the class for an Oxford Don to include Christianity in his fantasy. But I said that can't possibly be true because Tolkien was friends with C.S. Lewis, who was an extremely avowedly and openly Christian writer, and who was also an Oxford Don. So
Yep.
clearly, it could not have been, his shame at being among the literati. Nor do I think that Tolkien cared a tuppence what the literati thought of him or his fellow professors in the issue of The Lord of the Rings. That was never, if anything, he was more concerned with changing the way the literati thought about things. Tolkien has a distinction, a little bit like Chesterton does as well, on a different issue, which I'll mention in a moment. But Tolkien has the distinction of not only having Lord of, but he is also the reason that we, in the modern day, consider Beowulf to be a classic. That was all Tolkien. He revived critical scholarship of Beowulf, and his essay "The Monster and the Critic" is considered one of arguably the greatest essay on Beowulf ever written. And he's the reason it's taught in schools. Similarly, Chesterton actually did something very similar with Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was considered, a populist writer, for the masses, not somebody worth, reading critically or imitating, until Chesterton wrote a book of essays on Charles Dickens. And he made the case that Dickens was a master, and it's actually Chesterton's fault that Dickens is ruined for everybody in schools to this day. Because he's ruined in schools to this day. Now, I bring this all up to say that I think this tradition that I'm talking about of the Christianization of myths is something that Tolkien and Lewis specifically would have been very keenly aware of. Tolkien, especially in the Lord of the Rings, there's a lot of like the Silmarillion in a lot of ways was his attempt to write like a Christian pagan mythology, if that makes any sense, which is one of the reasons he was never able to properly finish it, because he was never quite able to bridge that gap properly.
I think someone brings up a comment. Hey, Mega Buster Shepard, he's been in and out. Hey. I had a really stupid hot take on Tolkien. I said he was overrated. It's okay, we forgive you. He also said, it's okay, I couldn't finish Dune, too dense. Dune is incredibly overrated past the first book. I have read plot summaries. I cannot even utter one iota of support for any book past the first book. Dickens, I like Dickens. I don't really seek him out, but I enjoy him. And I enjoy Bleak House. No, not Bleak House. Hold on.
I love A Christmas Carol. Christmas Carol is a great and deserved classic.
Nicholas Nickleby is an amazing movie.
I enjoyed A Tale of Two Cities when I read it. I found that to be quite good. I thought Great Expectations was boring as mud and terrible.
Mm-hmm. So, I like Tale of Two Cities is okay. It's just okay. It has a great ending, though. The ending's fantastic.
I like the book a lot. I do think the second half is better than the first half, but the first half isn't worthless, and the second half is excellent. So, overall, that makes it a pretty good book.
Mm-hmm.
A Christmas Carol is masterful, and if anything, it's kind of underrated because it's become so ubiquitous in pop culture.
Yeah.
I think people, I think that people look at A Christmas Carol as sort of poppy, and they don't give it enough credit for the genuinely excellent things that Dickens does in the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's a legitimately great book.
So they're bringing up Mega Buster Shepard brings up Robert Louis Stevenson. Absolutely.
Never read him.
You've never read Robert Louis Stevenson?
I have not. I have never read Stevenson. Treasure Island, right?
Yeah. So there are two absolutely amazing. He also did Jekyll and Hyde. I keep forgetting that. There are two
Damn, yeah. Wow.
Right.
Wow. Now that you say it, that literally only just occurred to me that they were the same person.
Yeah.
Wow.
So so the Treasure Island, there are two absolutely amazing 10 out of 10 things for it. The first one is Muppets Treasure Island. I will kill a man who says that it's terrible.
No, that's a pretty good movie.
Good. The songs are amazing. Sailing, sailing, da, 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 da. The jokes are on point. It all just works out. The other one is Treasure Planet.
Treasure Planet is a very fun movie.
Yes. I enjoy it very much. I think it is an excellent and well-made movie. I think that Titan AE is also kind of like it. Is kind of like Treasure Island, but it's its own thing enough that I'm not quite sure to call it that. I'm just not sure. I actually should look that up, whether it was inspired by Treasure Island. Anyway.
Yeah, Stevenson. I really should read Treasure Island, shouldn't I?
Yes, you should.
One day.
It is Absolutely.
Right now.
Hmm?
Well, here's the question for you, Ben, and then this is something too we could pick up again next week because we're hitting 9 o'clock, so it's getting later. What books are you reading right now, and have you just finished reading? Because I just finished Stephen Lawhead's series, the Dragon King trilogy, which is like everything Lawhead writes, excellent. Lawhead is truly like the unsung superversive writer of our times. And I am currently reading his, I think he called it the Bright Empire series. The first book is The Skin Map. I am also reading, concurrently with that, a book called The Hot Gates, which is about the Battle of Thermopylae. And it follows a soldier recounting the Battle of Thermopylae to Xerxes, a survivor of the battle. And he is telling about his training in Sparta and all of that stuff, and it's considered a classic. Would have been adapted into a movie if 300 wasn't made first, and so far it's quite excellent.
Fantastic. I just finished David Halquist's excellent. Hold on, what is it? What is the series called? It was his Hard Moon, State of Terra, and Blood Mars series. Back when he was working under Superversive Press. Raphael Sabatini. I have heard the name. I have never read it. Singularity War. Okay, so it's the Singularity War series by David Halquist, which is basically one guy gets into a fight and he doesn't stop fighting for 3 books. I'm not even joking. David Halquist is low-key an amazing author, and he needs to put out more stuff. He is a good friend of ours and myself, so I am very, very biased. The Raphael Sabatini, ooh, he actually has stuff I might be interested in because it's called The Seahawk Captain Blood by Arion. I love sea stuff. So I just finished that. I read all 3 books. It's a pretty quick read, but it's actually quite excellent. Right now, I'm reading Jim Butcher's Aeronauts Windlass, which is his steampunk slash Regency era ship-to-ship combat romance novel, kind of. Not really romance novel. That was quite excellent. I own the latest. I own Peace Talks, the latest Dresden Files novel, but I have not mustered the courage to read it yet, because it has been so many years since I've read a Jim Butcher novel. So I'm just easing myself in with Aeronauts Windlass. Oh my goodness, what happened? Anthony, no. Wait.
No, I'm here. I'm still here.
Sorry, it something like disconnected from my thing, and I'm not sure what, and I'm not sure why.
I always recommend, whenever I read Lawhead, I go back to him every now and then. I always recommend him to people as that guy who I have no idea why we're not talking about him more.
Right.
Because he seems to be exactly what we're looking for. He is openly and avowedly Christian.
Mm-hmm.
He is extremely superversive, and he's quite popular. Not like uber mega ultra popular, but popular
Right.
enough that his most popular books have like 200 reviews on Amazon, and even his less popular ones have, like 50. Stephen Lawhead wrote wrote the excellent Pendragon Cycle.
No, I have read his then.
What was that?
Arthur in Medieval Britain.
No, he wrote the Pendragon Cycle was Taliesin, Merlin, Pendragon, Grail, and Arthur is his Pendragon Cycle. And he wrote the King Raven trilogy, which is, if anything, his even better trilogy on Robin Hood, that like reset Robin Hood in Wales and made him like a displaced Prince of Wales. And it's excellent. I think it's called Hood, Scarlet, and Tuck.
Mm-hmm.
Great series. his Dragon King trilogy, which is completely original fantasy, set in an original fantasy world. Very, very avowedly Christian. I just finished it. Excellent series, start to finish. And I'm currently reading his extremely high concept sci-fi series, the Bright Empire series, and the first book called The Skin Map. That's about somebody who has the ability to like jump timelines and dimensions, and like his girlfriend gets stuck in another dimension. He has to go off with his grandfather and figure out where she got stuck, and they're searching for a map that tells them how all of the different intersections of dimensions work and how you could travel across them. And it's so far, I'm on book one, it's really good. And I have read Stephen Lawhead's historical fiction book Byzantium, which is about a monk who has been tasked to deliver a beautifully illustrated version of the Bible to the Emperor of Byzantium, and he gets kidnapped by Vikings on the way. And as the story progresses, like he ends up traveling to Byzantium with the Vikings and whatever. And I bring all of this up to try and convince all of you to read at least one of these, whichever one sounds the most interesting, because more people should read Stephen Lawhead. He's great. I don't know why more people in the Superversive world don't. Seems like he should be very popular among us, and yet I'm the only one I know who talks about it.
I admittedly do need to read Stephen Lawhead. It's just that I never come across him.
I came across his Pendragon cycle randomly one day, picked it up, loved it, moved on to his Robin Hood series, and if anything, it doesn't appeal to my sensibilities as much as the Arthur stories, but the writing quality, it came a little bit later in his career, and if anything, it's a little bit better writing-wise. Just the fact that he's a popular and avowedly Christian writer who doesn't write what we would think of as Christian fiction should immediately make him like, this is it, guys. This is exactly who we've been looking for, right? You know, this is everything that we've said we've wanted, and here he is.
Amazing.
And yet nobody I know reads him. It's so weird to me because I'm like, no, you know, nobody I know actually reads him, but he's not even unpopular. He's fairly popular, at least going by Amazon reviews as a metric.
Yeah.
He's probably more popular than John C. Wright.
Yeah. Well, John C. Wright has a very central and focused fan base. Like, and I firmly believe that he was screwed over by Tor and not given the focus that he really should have had, especially for his Golden Age series and his Count to a Trillion series, which is absolutely some of the most epic fiction I've ever read. I need to reread his books. I need to reread them.
I'm going to reread Awake in the Nightland now that I'm going through it. I was already just kind of randomly rereading. I pulled open The Cry of the Night Hound just to talk about, you know, his Antigone story, and I like got sucked into reading the story just because it was so entertaining. And Determined Sheepy says, you've made a good argument. I will read Lawhead. Good. For a first Lawhead book, I am going to recommend, before anything else, try out Hood. His King Raven trilogy. The first book in it is called Hood. I think that Hood starts off fast, has entertaining characters. The first book in his Pendragon cycle moves a little bit slowly and may not be as good to convince a new reader. But I think that Hood is probably better if I'm going to try and convince somebody to get into Lawhead. So that's my recommendation. King Raven trilogy, Hood. His
Yeah.
Dragon King trilogy is also a fine pick.
The some manga I reread. I finished Fire Punch, which is by the guy who did Chainsaw Man, and I'm currently updating myself religiously on Chainsaw Man because it's incredibly good, especially since Chainsaw Man has an excellent sense of grim humor, where an incredibly cowardly character is desperately trying to serve a hamburger to this guy who's made out of chainsaws and whose only wish in life is for chainsaws, and he keeps murdering her coworkers. But she's tripped over her own feet twice and is now like rolling into a ball and crying on the floor in front of him. It's so funny, like in it, but it is also so dark. So this is like the funniest thing you've ever seen, but at the same time you can't dare laugh because of how full of how much gravity it is. Just how insane the situation is. He's sitting in a family restaurant that has like singing waiters, and he's chainsawing them, and he's like, hamburger, and they're like, okay, you gotta serve him the hamburger. Why me? And she's gotta do it. Trips over her feet, spills the hamburger and drink all over this blood-filled chainsaw guy. You have to be there, but it is low-key hilarious.
Well, sure. If you want to talk about manga that I'm following, My Hero Academia, yes, it's still excellent. There's almost like there's not even much to add anymore. It's just like every single week, it's still excellent. Yes, this last week was also excellent.
I've been something new that we haven't talked about before. I am reading the Lore Olympus series on Webtoons. It's a pretty interesting take on the Greek gods, where our world is still that Greek stuff, but their world is essentially our world. So you have because like the Greek gods were essentially humans writ large. So they don't how do I want to put it? They act in ways you can understand, but at the same time, the author actually keeps a pretty good edge on their actual like godhood. Zeus sleeping around, acting like it, and like I can see where the plot's going because honestly, it's not like the most original plot ever. But like you can see Zeus ramping up to being like, I am the king of the gods, and all this needs to stop so I can figure out what's going on. And then the drama's gonna stop, and hopefully, if the writer's good, she'll have him actually figure out what's going on. But if not, it's gonna be all kinds of like weirdness and drama and teen angst. Not that the main characters are like only 1 or 3 characters are actually teens. Everyone else is adults. Like Hades is explicitly old, and like Zeus is old as well. It's just that there's also younger characters running around. I'm trying to find something. I like it big. It's interesting. And the art is incredibly well done. It's not like JoJo tier in the sense of like, there we go. I found it. It's good.
I do want to continue recommending you take a look at Kino's Journey when you have the time, because I'm still extremely curious as to what you'll think. It can really go either way, whether or you really enjoy it.
Right. I will find out soon.
You could read. It's a light novel series, and there is a manga adaptation. And the manga adaptation, Volume 1, which only has a couple of stories, but still, is like really, really cheap. I'm talking like $1 or something. You could download it. And that might be a good way to start off, though it's not the same art style as the 2003 anime.
It isn't.
But
so there's a
it's still worth
song
taking a look at.
that goes, I like 'em round, I like 'em plumpy, I like 'em chunky, chunky, chunky. And it's all just possum images, and I'm posting them up now.
Meanwhile, in Valhalla.
Right.
Nice.
That's a good one.
Possums are wholesome. Megabuster Shepherd says possums are wholesome. Megabuster Shepherd, you are correct. Yes, they are. I was converted to the Church of Possum.
Yeah.
I was originally one of the unbelievers who didn't get it. Then one day, I saw the light and it became clear. And now, no, you're the weird ones.
Right.
You non-possum lovers.
Right.
You're weird. Now I get it. And people try and ask me, they go, why possums or whatever? And the answer is, I don't know. It's a strange question. Why not possums?
Right.
No, but Kino's journey. Since I know that you tend to be very busy during the week, as I am as well, I'm gonna recommend a couple of. I'm going to recommend 2 or 3 episodes. So
yeah.
The best one.
I just need to sit down and watch it and decide. There might be best episodes, but I still remember Habane Reme, and how the best episodes are the last ones because they're the only ones that actually have characters interacting with each other.
The best episodes aren't a lot. That's not the same with as Kino's Journey, though. Kino's Journey is a very different show than Habane Reme. Really, I would say in tone and all of that stuff, they're not similar. That doesn't mean you'll like it. It just means you would dislike it for a different reason.
Ooh. Delightful. All right, Megabuster Shepherd's got to go. I think it is also our time to go as well. Just remember, guys.
I too have work in the morning, so.
I do not. This is my one true day off. Genuinely, I work 6 days a week, and it drives me bonkers. Because I have 2 overnights. So they're like, Ben, you get Friday off. But it's I work from 10 p.m. Thursday to 7 a.m. Friday. It's not a day I have off. I'm alright, though. Anyway, guys, see us next week when we talk about Norse mythology and Christianizing Norse mythology. I think people enjoyed it. We will start, as we always do, at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. And I hope you guys join us there, too. Have a good night. Like 'em round, plumpy, chunky, chunky. Like 'em chumpy, pumpy, funky.